Hey guys, I'm Husain. Today we'll be looking at uh, how we follow for CMS. Usually we write front end code for websites. There's a different process, but keeping a CMS and keeping Sitecore in mind, there are some things we need to take care of, like uh, modularity, how will it work with Sitecore and Sitecore. This is a Sitecore meetup, so we'll be talking about keeping Sitecore in mind, but all these concepts can be used for other content management systems also. So let's. So the first thing we need to keep in mind when we are uh, when we are creating front end code. So usually when we write front end code, we create a HTML page, and that HTML page we then integrate it with uh, whatever the CMS is. It could be it's just like one page and one CSS file. There's a style.css file, and then there's the home page, and all the modules are shoved into one page. But uh, this does not work properly, right? Because when we are collaborating, when we are in a team, we need to have a modular approach. There may be multiple front end people. We have a versioning system, so we don't want to overstep on each other's toes. So what do? We write modular code. We split our code into multiple parts, and again we split those parts into multiple parts. So I'm not going to go very detailed into how we write multiple, what is how we do this in very detail, but I'll just tell you what we follow at one day, what is our process, and how we can start writing modular code. So what does it mean actually? What does writing modular code mean? What does splitting of files mean for front end? So first, we split all our modules. We split so we have different modules. We have callouts. We have modules. There could be multiple sections. There's a primary nav. There's a header. There's a footer. Uh, the header has a primary nav inside. The primary nav has submenus inside it, and submenus might have different sections inside. So we create different files for all these, and we write our code into these files. So this is what basically writing modular code is. With this also comes how we write the code. So this is just the process, the files, but the way we write the code is also impacted by it. So we use, because we are working in a team, uh, we need to be able to read each other's codes. We need to be able to maintain it after a year. When the website is released after a year, we need to be able to come back and read the code easily. We need to trou- we It should be easy to troubleshoot the code. So we follow proper naming conventions. Again, there is a long debate about what kind of naming conventions we follow. So here we have a standard. So for HTML classes, we follow the BEM standard. So the way that works, again, I'm not going to go into much detail in this, because this is not. This is again, it requires its own presentation, its own session. So what that does is, we have a module. There are for example, there is a page module, and the page module has um, let's say a title and a description. So we have come up with a solution, with a common solution, that will write page module. For example, if we want to add a class to the title, so we'll say page module underscore underscore title. So that's the naming convention we came up with. So it's very important to come up with a common naming convention, and BEM naming convention is very common. So that is what we're using here. Uh, that is what this is, right? So we prefix the title with its module, so where the title is. So we do that. And if the say the title is hidden, so page module underscore title, and we can say is hidden, or whatever adjective we want, we can add to that. So again, so this is one of the things we can do to follow a common process. Other thing is namespacing in JavaScript. So again, this is important. We don't want to pollute the global namespace in JavaScript. So we want uh, every module to be contained within itself. So we use, for example, we use nested namespacing, that is app dot module, app dot module dot action, something like that. So again, this is out of scope of this. I'm just bringing all this up so we have an idea of how modular code is written. Um, so why do we need to write modular code? So again, as I said, distributed development. So usually it is seen like we have one front-end developer and there can be many back-end developers, and it is when there's just one front-end developer, it's very easy to develop front-end. I mean, with the nature of front-end, JavaScript files are shared, CSS is shared, um, HTML also can be shared. We have common HTML. So what happens when there are multiple developers? All this together, when there is just one file, when there's CSS, when there's JS, people tend to step on each other's toes, and there are conflicts and there are merges and all that. So again, that is why here modularity comes into play. So when we split all our files, so the CSS, we split CSS based on the modules. If the For example, if there's a primary navigation, so for the CSS for primary navigation is split, again we can further split it into sub menu and all that. So that is why it's useful. And everyone over here, we use versioning systems. So normally we use SVN, but based on the client we can I've used Git and Microsoft's TFS also. So it's easy to commit and get the file. So we spend less time in merging conflicts and more time in developing. Um, Next is dependency management. So when, for example, we're using JavaScript, so JavaScript is heavily dependent on other modules, right? Even CSS to an extent is dependent on other CSS. It might need a proper layout CSS to inherit those styles. Uh, and JS, of course, we need it. It might depend on jQuery, or it might depend on some external plugin or an internal plugin. So in when we're writing modular code for jQuery, we are still in the uh, initial stages, but we've started using require.js. It's a modular JavaScript loader. So what it does is it loads JavaScript based on the dependency. So once, for example, jQuery is loaded, all supported modules will load, and once, for example, a slider plugin is loaded, so then those modules will start loading. So that is how dependency works. So again, if you write modular code, it is very easy to load modules depending on other modules. Maintenance is a key factor. So if everything is modularized, it's structured into folders and everything, it is very easy to get to those files. It is very easy to read the files. It is very easy to read the code. Increasing maintenance, because I would have written some code, and after 1 year there's a different developer, so we don't want him to be frustrated. We would If there's like a 1 hour bug fix, it should not take 5 hours to just start reading the code and understanding the code. So this helps marginally. After we started using uh, writing modular code, it's helped us marginally to um, maintain all our code. It's scalable. So if there was just if all our code was in one file, we would have had to go into that file and find the proper line and then add more lines into those. The same thing CSS. We would have gone into CSS and we would have injected some CSS somewhere where we wouldn't even have known. Or what happens at the end, we just write there's some fix for some CSS and we just go at the end and say we comment like fixes and we just start fixing the files. But with modules, so you already have that module, so you'll just go and fix something in that module, and if you want to extend some module, if you want to create a new module, we just go and create those files and start just put those modules inside our HTML. And responsiveness. The way this works is when we create HTML in modules, we are forced to make those modules work everywhere because it's a module. So so this helps in responsiveness. By default, our modules are responsive because we won't give a fixed width, we won't give a fixed height to our modules. So by default, they're responsive, and that's how this helps, creating responsive sites. You just create a module and just put it in the sidebar or in the content, and it'll just work. So why do we need modular code for Sitecore specifically? So it is easier to integrate. So for here, the process we follow over here is we write our HTML and then we uh, give it to the engineers, and usually there is a time gap and a geographical location gap, so our engineers could be somewhere else. So we don't want to, it should be very readable, right? So if every code is modularized, so Sitecore has its views and renderings, and if MVC code is used and all that, so we try to use the same folder structure. So when the engineers come in, okay, they know that you know for example, if it's the primary nav, they know that it's in global slash primary nav folder. So uh, that's basically a lifesaver. So they're not blocked and they know where everything is. So again, so it makes the modules, it makes our folder structure and the backend folder structure as close as possible. And again, even backend developers, are many developers, so people, since each module is its own entity, they can just go in and take that particular module and just use it. The other developer can use another module. So that's uh, how it helps. So I wanted to show the
Just a minute. Sorry, I actually see it. You can continue.
okay. So so I wanted to show different folder structures, how it how we follow that over here. So we have so I'm going to go a bit more detail in the future slide of what process we follow, how do we concatenate the code.
Thank you.
Okay. Uh, so I just wanted to show this structure. So basically this is the root structure. We have our CSS, our images, our JS, and the same structure is followed when it is taken to the Sitecore solution. Um, then there are layouts and pages and partials. So CSS again has multiple folders inside it. We could have about CSS related to the about page could go inside the about and callouts. Then there are explore and all these different global CSS and all these can go into the, and they can again further be uh, categorized. So we have a naming convention. We use underscore community dot. We use SAS as our CSS toolkit. Again, that in the future. So we use underscore community and news plus plus. So that's our naming convention. So again, CSS is basically just our thing. Backend people don't have to worry about this. So, but I just have to mention it. Then there's the JS file. Even JS, similar to CSS, is categorized. Uh, Next is the partials. So we have like each for a footer. So footer will have the copyright text. So the copyright text will come, and each partial will have different folders, and those folders can have multiple folders or files in them. So there are different HTML files broken down into different modules. And then there are layouts. So each page has maybe a page has a one column layout or a two column main left or two column main right layout. So all these layouts are managed and these layouts are used for the pages. Again, this is basically very similar to how Sitecore works, right? So you use layouts, you create pages, you have there's a basic layout, and there are different layouts if you want to. So this is again this is an effort to make it as close to the backend code as possible. Then all then these pages are basically the containers of all these modules. So you create a page and put all these modules inside these pages. So basically this is how our folder structure works. So this is so now we must be wondering, right, how everything comes together, how because there's the CSS, there are the CSS files. How do we give the CSS files to the engineers? How do we give these pages and these partials to the engineers? How do we concatenate them? How do we optimize them? So we use automation technologies. Um,
Please carry on. I'll present from here.
does anyone recognize? No?
Oh, sorry, it's extending.
Okay. Does anyone recognize this logo? So this is basically a task runner. JavaScript has task runners. So this is basically uh, the logo for Grunt. So there's a so what Grunt does is it's basically you can automate tasks using the tool. You can concatenate files. You can uglify JavaScript files. If there are multiple JavaScript files, I mean we'll be writing very clean code, right?
What does uglify mean?
Yeah, so we'll be writing uh, clean code with all the comments and everything. So usually with multiple tabs, and we have, again, for writing JavaScript files we have a process that we follow. So it should be very readable. That's our main goal. So but all those extra spaces, all the overhead, all those comments, they might not be needed in the production side. So we use these automation tools, Grunt for example. There are multiple, there's Gulp and there's Power, and there are multiple tools. So we use Grunt over here simply because we started this 2 years back and it was popular then.
Is uglify different from minifying? Is it,
Yeah.
it's different?
So Uglify. So what Uglify does is Uglify is mainly related to JavaScript. So Uglify. In JavaScript there are functions, right? So I'll name the functions. I can have long names for the functions. I can say function
Okay.
open collapse menu. So what Uglify does is instead of collapse menu, it renames it to A, B, C, or whatever single letters,
Okay.
and it everywhere wherever it is dependent, it automatically uh, uh, renames everything. So it decreases the file size and it uglifies it. It removes the comments and everything is like in one line. It removes spaces and
How's it
everything.
different from minifying?
Minifying is JavaScript. Sorry, minifying is in CSS. So what CSS
Okay.
in CSS it so what CSS does is you cannot uglify CSS, right? You cannot
Yeah, you can't go and change the
you
names of
cannot
the
go and
classes and
change in the
everything, right?
names, and yeah.
Uh,
So everything is
just
has to be the same,
just the
but
spacing
it just decreases the spacing.
compresses. Okay.
So Minify also does things like merging of rules and stuff with CSS. It has its own things, but that is why. So Minify is usually used in. There are actually plugins. So there's a Minify plugin and there's an Uglify plugin.
Okay.
And Uglify is used for JavaScript. Minify is used for CSS. So these Grunt supports all these plugins. So so basically, this is what Grunt does. Um, so why do we use automation? So there are so many repetitive tasks like creating files, for example, writing the same HTML code everywhere, writing the same CSS everywhere. So we don't have to go and say dot page module or, and give a style. This does that automatically. Um, I mean, repetitive tasks. It takes care of that. If you want to create sprites, you don't have to go into Photoshop and cut the image and put it exactly where you want it to, and then go in CSS and when we are calling for sprites, we don't have to add the position and all that. So you just put an image into one folder and it automatically creates a sprite for you. So all these things, it makes life much easier, and again it does minifying and concatenating on itself, so we don't have to do it manually. So that is and then it provides a unified workflow in the sense that uh, if I have created uh, so the lead or the the main engineer goes in and creates this folder, and when and adds dependencies. So I would say, okay, if anyone who uses this toolkit needs to follow these rules, the CSS positioning should be like this. There should be like one line between each rule, one line space between each rule. Tab should be four spaces, and that's like one thing. JavaScript should follow these styles, and sprites should be in a particular way. Namings of classes should be in a particular way. Don't use IDs in style sheets. All these things. I can go in and create rules, and everyone can follow them. I can make it house. I can make it strict also. So if they don't follow these rules, it won't build the site at all. It will cause errors. So so this is how we, if we are a big team, we can have a unified workflow, and of course it saves a lot of time. Once before I was using CSS, I was creating styles. Um, I was writing styles by hand. I was like dot page module and do stuff. Uh, Now it's so easy. I just go dot page module, inside that do something. If it is a let's if there are breakpoints, if it's a mobile, do something. I just have to write one line and everything is done. That's how easy it is. Again, this warrants its own presentation. I mean, it's a huge topic, automation. Maybe in the future we can have a. So let me show you how it works, how a toolkit works. So so this is basically our a demo website. So there is the app folder. There's the app folder where we do all our development.
You open tab.
Where we do all our development, and then there is the distribution folder where everything is concatenated, and uh, you know all the HTML is put into one page, and then we can give it to the engineers if we wanted to. So let me give you a glimpse of how it works. So I have so in the app folder there's CSS, and there are pages and everything. Uh, Let me so so there's a home page in the app folder. So let me go and view this in the browser. So the one more main thing automation does is it has its own web server. So what I have to do once configured is just go in and say start dev server. So this is all pre-configured before, so I just go in and say start dev server, and so this is what happens. It will start uh, the server and open the browser automatically.
Also open here.
So it opened my folder. So this is basically our start page. So again we have this other thing. So these are our pages. We work sprint wise. So all we categorize all our pages sprint wise if you wanted to. So Let's go to the home page over here. So again, this is created automatically. So whenever you add a new page, it already automatically comes on the index page which we saw before. So let's see, this is an example page, and I want to show it to you. So I go in and change something. So another advantage of using automated automation task runner is so. So I can just go in and hey there, and notice when I save this, what happens? It will automatically refresh the page. Should.
Did you save it?
Okay, it automatically refresh the page. It is it's very instant. Uh, the same. So with this, this is just Firefox, right? So when multiple monitors are opened, sorry, when multiple browsers are opened, there is IE, there is Firefox, there is Chrome. It will refresh pages in every browser. It also works on mobiles, so it gives a link to the mobile. If you use that link, it will refresh mobile browsers also. So it's very easy this way, and it also so for example, if you had select boxes and everything, if you had forms, if you fill a form over here, it fills it everywhere. If you click on the menu over here, it clicks it observes clicks and everything. So that's one big advantage of using Grunt. Again, Grunt is just what we use. There are multiple options out there. So this is how our toolkit works. I have developed this. Now I want to give this to the engineers. What I would do now is I would close this. I would so it all. I would close this and click on build site. Again, everything is pre-configured. These options. It just runs a command. It's a same batch file. It runs a command and it will build the file. This is what it looks like. It minifies the code. If you see over here, the process, it cleans the folders, unwanted files it removes, it minifies, and it uh, creates css, it merges css and everything. So after, it's still working, but after, at the end, when we come over here and when we look at the dist folder in the css, if you see, there are just two css files. There's the ie8.css and then there is a style.css. If you see in the app folder where we actually worked on, it was, this is what it was. Plus each folder has multiple, so it concatenates and minifies all the CSS files, and this is what you get. Even with HTML, it does that. Uh, and if you're using require.js, there's the r.js task runner, which also minifies JavaScript files with dependencies. So that is one thing. Uh, so this is how we do it over here. Then we commit the file and we just send it out an email or something. They can copy the file from the test folder. Okay, if the engineers want to view the file, they can just go in, and there is another. So we use there's another option. They can say start preview server. So you just go in and they can view the file over they don't want it to. So this is updated. So this makes it easy for everyone to just, so they just have to copy paste this folder into their machines, or take the latest from SVN and they can just preview the file. Okay. So moving on. So a few things to consider. when we are writing code is, yeah, so I'm trying to trend this. uh, so a few things to consider is, though, when I've kind of split this into two parts. One is for the front end engineers and one is for the back end engineers. So all content, when we're writing front end code, especially for site code, all content should be in the HTML files. So let's say, for example, if we have a button, the button the button expands and collapse the text, but when you click on the button, it should change the text to expand or collapse. uh, so normally what we would have done is, using jQuery, we would have just said change the text to whatever text we wanted to, but that doesn't work, right? Because engineers cannot have access to the JS files. So, and the text is not written in stone. It could come from dictionary item. It could, if it's an international site, the text changes. So a better way of doing this is keeping the text also using maybe a data attribute or whatever. Keeping the text inside the HTML and then accessing that data attribute through Java jQuery. So this is like one of the most important things. Maybe we have, for example, another example is we have background images, and images come from content authors. So in that case, we can have inline styles. We cannot use IMG tags everywhere. We sometimes we need to use background images, so we can have inline tags inside, because again engineers cannot access CSS files. So inside the HTML files, we have the inline styles, and there they can go in and add the images. The next thing is avoid using internal JS, because sometimes uh, so usually we try to from the front end, we try to use all the JS from the front end, but sometimes there is a need to use JS from the back end also. So it is advisable that we collaborate and we come up with a proper solution. If it needs to be put in the HTML, we come up, we look at the dependencies and everything, and then we uh, do that. Otherwise, they give the JS to the front end and we use it from the front end files. Uh, so that is, so what happens if we do all this to avoid conflicts. So for example, we load jQuery in the footer, but if some JavaScript is added on top with the content and jQuery is not loaded, it will cause errors. If the JavaScript, maybe there's some dependency error, some function is not called properly. So because of the nature of JavaScript, everything below that will break. So to avoid all these things, um, then there is it's also difficult to troubleshoot, because we don't know when the website is launched, when it's on the QA server, we don't know where the JS files are. So it's very important to organize JavaScript files. It also, of course, does HTML files are meant for HTML, not JavaScript and internal CSS. So it's meant to it reduces clutter. uh, Next is comments. Comments for, as a front end engineer, I need to add proper comments on each files. So for example, there's a requirement that this is the a module, and the caption is on the left side. So the content author can go in and change the caption from left to right. So this is how I create the HTML, saying that class is equal to module data align caption on the left or right. So if I just do this, the engineers will not know what is happening. So if I write proper comments saying that if this happens, do this. So it's many times using JavaScript. If you want to show arrow marks and all that. So if there are, for example, in this case, so if again if there are less than three items, I don't want to show arrow marks. If there are more than three items, I want to show arrow marks. So again, we write a comment. Uh, with that point, so we also, it's preferable to handle some logic if you have a choice between handling logic in JavaScript or backend, it's preferable to do it backend because JavaScript is an overhead. It it reduces performance, right? It increases the code size also, and it reduces. Main thing is it reduces performance. The browser has to do the calculations. Examples of that is truncation. So if truncation can be handled backend, it would be better. Excuse me. Um, then for the second one is an example of a slider. So if there were like 5 items, there should be a slider. So I give a class. So I request the backend engineers to if there are 5 items, please provide a class so I can use a class to create a slider. I I, I will not go in and check the length in JavaScript. I mean, I could do that, but again, that's an extra overhead for the browser. Uh, so there are some things for the backend engineers also. For example, IDs. Because sometimes Sitecore generates some IDs which are not valid. Chrome has issues with that. So um, IDs should at least these are some of the uh, um, things. uh, ID should be at least one character, must not contain any spaces, all values are case sensitive, should be unique. Again, because front end we just have one file, if they copy paste the modules, the IDs should be generated in such a way that they are unique. um, it should always begin with a letter. I've seen that many times it begins with a number. It's not valid. Chrome has issues with that. Uh, so this is just an example. The for and ID of the label and input should be the same. There are many cases. For example, if you're using accessible code, uh, so aria labeled by, and again comments would be helpful in those cases. So engineers also should keep in mind that the IDs can be uh, common between two things, sorry, not the IDs, the ID and the element which uses that ID should have common text. um, so if, for example, there's a h2 tag, if there is no text inside the h2 tag, the h2 tag also should not come. The main reason is because uh, it the screen readers, when it's reading the code, it reads the tags. So if there's a p tag, it says there's a paragraph. If there's a heading, it says heading. And if it says heading and there is no text inside it, the user is confused. It said heading, but there's no, what is the heading? So it's better to not have those h2 tags at all. It can screw up design. If you have added a margin top or something for the h2 tag, if it's an empty h2 tag, a margin top will be added, but there is no text for the margin top. So that is one more thing. Um, the next is, excuse me, it causes unnecessary bloat. Uh, so the number of tags, um, the number of tags are important in a HTML document for JavaScript purposes and everything. So the JavaScript, because when you select a tag, if you say $A, if you want to select all A tags, if there are more tags, unnecessary tags, it has to look through all those tags. So it is important to have a to reduce all these unnecessary overheads. um, Again, as I said, it can cause style issues. If there's a padding or if there's a margin, it will cause an empty tag to have a margin or a padding. So that is one. uh, Again, this is a very important point. And when we are adding JS, we need to collaborate. uh, there has to be a proper communication because it's very fickle JavaScript. It can cause errors. um, so say there are two HTML elements, so it's again very important to use the code as it is given by the front-end engineer. For example, if there are CSS as options, so if one page module comes below the other page module, add a proper style, add a margin top, for example. If there are two modules, the second module, if it comes below the first module, add a margin top. But if the first module is there on the page, don't add any margin. That is what it's saying in the second line over there. So it's important to not have, so if between these two page module elements, if you added a script tag or some hidden input element, it would break this CSS style, because it would not be, plus means just the next selector and it would not be the next selector. So this is very important. Yeah, so this is all I had today. uh, do you have any questions? Okay, great. Thank you for listening, guys.
Alright, we're gonna take a short break, and yeah, after that we'll continue with the glass master session.